Call to order the public hearing for July 10th, 2023, 24. Oh, sorry. You're right, July 24th. Roll call, please.
O'Brien.
Present.
Almus. Present. Thorstensen. Here. Woodside. Ross. Here. Garner.
Here.
5 present.
So this is a public hearing to consider contributing $150,000, rebating up to $1 million of sales tax revenue and conveying stormwater credits to Red Crown Investments, LLC, 141, to allow for site redevelopment at 4885 and 4821 Grand Avenue, including demolition of existing structures and construction of a minimum 5,000 square foot commercial building for a fuel station / convenience store. Pat?
Sure, so I'll give you a summary and then the petitioners here make a presentation and then answer any questions that the village board has. So you received a memo from our economic development director, Ellen Dean, on this. Graham Enterprise, family owned, been in business since 1922. Currently operate 37 company-owned fuel stations around the Chicagoland area. Looking at the Avalon and BP sites over at Gurnee 21, so Avalon's been vacant for about 5 years. It's in the floodplain, so therefore there's restrictions on how much can be reinvested into the building to get it up and running and revenue generating again. Based on the fair market value and the work that needs to be done, that's a very difficult situation. And as a result, it's been sitting vacant for some time now. Graham approached the village about purchasing the Avalon and combining that with the BP site and redeveloping both sites into a fuel station convenience store concept branded Trio. They've got some other existing Trio locations, including Vernon Hills, North Chicago, Northbrook. Looking to tear down the Avalon and the BP, construct a minimum 5,000 square foot commercial building, which is compliant with all the FEMA and Lake County Watershed Development Ordinance provisions. Excluding the land acquisition, it's over a $5 million project. So discussing with the village, it's attractive to us, obviously, get that corner cleaned up and get the Avalon out of there since it is vacant. So similar to our other sales tax sharing agreements that we've done as of late, combination of a direct contribution and then some sales tax sharing. With this agreement, we would provide a direct contribution funded from the Economic Development Reserve. So you remember we include $300,000 in the budget every year for the Economic Development Reserve. If it's not spent, that money's carried forward and save that up. So $150,000 from that upon opening of the business. Based on their sales projection, we'd be paid back that $150,000 within 5 years. Sales tax rebate, again, similar to other agreements that we've done as of late. So we retain our base and then rebate anything above that. So the village would retain the first $75,000 of sales tax generated from the property. Above that, we would rebate 100% of the state sales tax and half of the village's home rule sales tax. So we would retain that other half of the home rule sales tax and continue to funnel that to capital improvements. That maximum is capped at $1 million or 12 years, so whichever one comes first. If they hit the $1 million in year 10, the agreement's done. If we get to year 12 and they haven't hit the $1 million, the agreement's done. Kind of unique to this one is also the village conveying some stormwater credits that we have. So a portion of the structure will be constructed in the floodplain. If you're going to fill in the floodplain, you've either got to take material out someplace else or have stormwater credits to cover that. So the village has stormwater credits on hand from when we removed the DQ property in the Harris line on Old Grand. We are not planning on doing any sort of construction in the floodplain anytime soon. So part of this is to convey 30,000 cubic feet of stormwater credits that we have to Grams to help with this project. They'll also get credit from the volume of the Avalon building. So the combination of those two, they should be in a good spot from a stormwater perspective. Construction timeline, so per the agreement, they've got to get started no later than July of next year. Speaking with the petitioner, they're hoping to get started before that, potentially in the fall. And again, 5,000 square foot building, at least $5 million investment, agree to operate it for 20 years. Separate from this, so not to be considered tonight, but again, this is consistent with what we've done with some other economic development projects as of late, is a building fee waiver. So as part of this, staff is recommending waiving up to $100,000 in building permit fees, so that will come forward in a separate ordinance at a future village board meeting. Ellen's memo also has some information about the site plan and a schematic in there. So looking at 16 fueling positions with a convenience store, potential for a drive-through coffee shop on the east side, taking the curb cuts down from 9 to 3, which will help from a traffic safety and flow perspective. Also straightening out the property line with the property to the south there. So currently it's kind of a zigzag property line. As part of this redevelopment, they're going to straighten out that property line. So that's also a benefit of this project. So yeah, in summary, again, similar to other agreements we've done, some direct contribution when it's open, sales tax sharing that protects our base, and gets a vacant property out of the floodplain that is really challenging to get that back up and to be revenue producing. So that's kind of your 1,000-foot summary on the project.
Thanks. So would, Mr. Graham, would you like to make a presentation?
You guys swear him in, Brian?
Because this is a public hearing, if anybody's going to give any comments or presentations at this time, would you please raise your right hand? You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. If you can hear me okay? So I don't have any formal presentation. I just wanted to thank the village, the staff, and of course all of you trustees for considering the offer that we've brought forward. We do think we've got a project that we don't have a lot of choices with in terms of how we go forward at that corner. We've got an industry that's changing, a facility that just in the long term won't compete. And without the accumulation of the Avalon property, we just can't build the type of site that you see on paper in front of you. You know, we're faced with an industry that's changing in many ways. The energy transformation is something that's talked about commonly these days. I would tell you that without the funds that were talked about and ultimately are in front of you for consideration, we couldn't have mitigated some of the risk that we feel just exists with our industry going forward. I would tell you that I think a lot of sites like the one that we have today will close up in the not the immediate future, but in the somewhat not so distant future. Ultimately, compliance issues that our industry is faced with from an environmental standpoint are state statutes that are forcing the industry forward in pretty meaningful ways underground with existing facilities. And I think in most cases it'll put people in a position where they look at what is the possibility of competing in the long term. And so knowing those things and looking at the opportunity of the Avalon being vacant for long as it was, and with staff's help in understanding some of the mitigation factors for the compensatory storage and just building in a floodplain is something that takes a bit of understanding. I would say that without the help that we've got from staff, we wouldn't have been as confident as we were to move forward. And then with our neighbor, Chris Kyatt, we were able to kind of work through in very friendly fashion, straightening of that property line and a swap of even some property that on a net basis benefits him in the future for additional parking. So I know there were a couple of questions on sustainability and on the flood control, and I guess I had to defer to our engineer to give you any confident answer on that subject, but I think we are going to retain more water than is being shed today, just in kind of a sheet fashion off and into the storm sewers. So I think with the improvements that we're making underground, there's even an improvement to just the limited flood controls that will become a part of the project naturally. And then the compensatory storage that the village is offering, again, is a form of assistance that's meaningful and not anything but helpful in giving us the confidence to move forward. On the sustainability issues, I'm not sure what they are, and so I'll take questions if they're more specific than to give you confidence that our industry is participating in all kinds of ways to improve from a best-in-class standpoint. Just simple sustainability issues, the delivery of product, just from the standpoint of building a new facility, we're going to have all kinds of improvements from an efficiency, an energy efficiency standpoint. And I know we're an industry that's, that looks like the bad guy all the time, but we've been at this a long time, and it's an evolving industry that's depending more on the future of convenience, and potentially, we will likely participate in the electrification and the charging of cars. It's not something that we're willing to do at this time, but the investment is following the opportunity. And again, in terms of putting a size parcel together that's big enough to have additional parking to be able to handle that opportunity when it presents itself is another reason for why you need the kind of property we've got. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them to just create additional clarity, but I can tell you that we're thankful for the business-friendly conversation that we've had with the city, and from the very beginning, we tried to create just a two-way street that was understandable and productive, so.
Well, I'll look to my right and ask if there's trustees that have specific questions.
So mine were the two that you mentioned earlier in terms of the reduced credits. I'm going to ask Pat on that one in just a minute. But on the sustainability efforts, so we have a Gurnee Green program in Gurnee, and two of our businesses have already won it, and we'd like to use those efforts to bring us all up, continue to elevate all of our sustainability efforts. So I didn't know, when you talk about best in class, if you did have any best practices for recycling or sustainability that puts your business a cut above the other convenience stores. And if you don't have that info, you want to provide it later, you can.
I don't have specific, answers or examples of how we're participating in every case, but so many of our vendors, whether it's Coca-Cola or Pepsi-Cola, they've got their own initiatives. So we're depending in a lot of cases for them to bring forward, methods of delivery and return of any of these products that ultimately used to come in lots of forms that weren't in a sustainable, packaging. So I would say that we're trying to do, the new construction of a new facility creates all kinds of efficiencies, whether it's lighting or the HVAC or just even the building materials from an insulation standpoint. But I would say that we've got so many partners that have much more capability, and just the logistics of what they do is what we're depending on before we step in front of them. But we're watching and trying to be compliant and progressive in terms of how we can make choice. And so I think you'll find us a friend to the community and to the programs that are brought forward. But I think I can stand behind pretty comfortably some of the people that we're working with that are further ahead than you might even expect they would be without a push. And so those changes are evident all the time to me, but I think we kind of wait for some of it to come to us in a form that's meaningful. So I hope that's helpful. But
It is, thank you.
Yes, Trustee Russ?
You've already answered my question, because I was wondering about the electric charging stations.
Yeah.
And so you're not ready to do that yet, but if you do, where would you put them?
Well, and then the straightening of that property left us with some parking that's, both on the south side, southeast, kind of corner of the property out in front of the pumps. Up near the corner is from a visibility standpoint, would be probably something that would be attractive, because it's the furthest point from the convenience store where people coming and going, they're depending on a spot that they're going to be at for at least at this time with the technology as it exists, for longer than the typical visit of a convenience store customer. It will come down to, a partner that ultimately is willing to make the investment, knowing that there's a return and that it's a part of a kind of a network effort. So much of it right now is being done along the interstates, and a lot of the funding that supports the effort at this time is creating an effort or kind of a network that's generally 50 miles apart, and the communities like Gurnee have the opportunity as time goes on to be able to depend on home charging. So the choices that are made, I think, going forward, you know, aren't clear at this time, but the investment is one that just can't be made with an expectation of a return. And so generally, people are waiting for that to come to us with a little more clarity. And I know the technology is evolving so quick that, you almost don't want to move too quickly because it'll be obsolete before you could ever get a return, and ultimately before the technology comes in a form that the customer's most happy with. So we're studying it closely, but I think the thing that we've done is try to prepare these sites. And that, when I say a site like ours today can't compete, it's because it doesn't have those spots that are going to be required in the long term. So.
To my left, Trustee Balmas.
You may or may not be able to, I noticed that in order to be in this location is because of the floodplain. What fill and at what level then, because that slopes down, and I noticed that you have the pumps on the west side,
Right.
which is already up at a higher point, but how will that then affect the eastern side of that property then? How is that?
Yeah, I think one of the responsibilities we've got to build in the floodplain is to have the floor level of it, of the new facility as it comes forward, to be 2 feet above what is the, I think it's the 100-year floodplain. Am I right on that?
Which is though gonna be like 4 feet that you're gonna have to put in there. It's 2 feet, according to what's here already, there's 2 feet below, so you're gonna have to go 4 feet up. Is that my understanding of that?
Yeah, I guess the best example I can make, and it was made for me as well, is at the Speedway at Dilly's and Grand Avenue. If you could picture the facility on the back side of that, it's the foundation that'll be raised up, and the floor and all will be raised above. The parking behind the building will depend on a ramp and step up to come up, so we're not going to raise the whole area. Well, you will have some parking at the front will be at parity with the ground level, and there isn't much of a drop at that point when we bring the front of the building forward. But the backside will depend on kind of those steps and ramp to come up and in.
So there will be a considerable drop there
Yeah, I think.
between the
from
building and that eastern entrance.
I should be better prepared to give you exactly what that answer is, but I think that is, you know, the ground floor or grade in the parking that's along Riverside Drive on the backside there. It's probably at least 4 feet below the finished floor of the store.
Then along with that, then, is the entrance on the north side there, is that going to be an only in and out? A right turn in and a right turn out? They will not be able to cross the lanes to get into it then? Or we don't?
I mean, it's a right in, right out, but what people do to get in and out of there is.
Well,
yeah,
I mean, I'm not,
It's set up as a right in, right out, yeah.
okay. All right.
Anything further? You
It'll
good?
be easier when I see some drawings down the pike here. I don't want to,
I
Okay.
think your concerns are ours. We want it to be accessible and
I mean,
ultimately.
I would love to see this go through and see that developed.
Yep.
Believe me, I don't mean to sound like I'm being negative towards it, but
No, I understand.
I am
as
concerned about the
I'm
floodplain.
dependent a bit
and
on
all
the
of that.
engineer's confidence that it can be done and that it's, going to be a very user-friendly facility, but there is some elevation challenges, and we knew those going in. I think the parking behind the building will be convenient, but lesser used than the front side of the facility, and so I don't think the average customer is going to see that. There'll be some employee parking. There'll be, maybe a longer-term user, but there is that backside at Speedway, and you can see how active that is, so.
Got it.
Trustee Woodson?
Yeah, my question is related, just for clarity. So is traffic going to be able to travel all the way from Milwaukee to Riverside through the property? Will that grade pass through the property with that slope?
Yes, but, you know, I think that there's, we'll minimize the slope as much as possible, and there are, I think, engineering codes that are gonna keep that from becoming a toboggan slide for sure. It's, it looks, you know, when you travel that distance is probably 400 feet at least, and, you know, I think in that much time, or in that much slope, you're able to control a bit of that, and we'll do it, you know, in that area from the pumps is where it'll probably start to decline. And again, a picture's gonna be worth 1,000 words here, but I think, again, our concern is that we don't end up with anything that's either a safety concern or unfriendly to a customer, so.
Sure.
Yeah.
No,
And we also are challenged with not bringing in, you know, a lot of fill, because every, I think of the way it was explained to me, every shovelful that we put in, we have to have 1.3 shovelfuls of storage, so it becomes expensive to do more than you need to. But we won't do less than we have to either.
I imagine the proof will be in the elevations, so it's an engineering challenge. I'm not smart enough to wrap my head around, but I will echo the comments that I think this is a great project. Very excited to be able to partner and take this challenging property and turn it into something that's gonna be a great investment in the future, so thank you.
Appreciate the support.
Trustee Garner?
Will customers be able to access the Kayet property from your properties through a pass-through?
They're not gonna be able to, but I think I alluded to the swap, you know, of some property that's, if you can picture where the Avalon, there's some additional parking that's kind of to the south, off of that Riverside piece.
Right.
We're actually giving that property to Chris Kayet. I think what ends up happening is he'll have a choice between raising that property up. He does have, and we've provided an access easement to that property, but if he leaves it at the existing grade, it'll be for, I think, employee parking might be what he's thinking today. If he chooses to raise that up or ramp it to the level that's probably at least 2.5 feet above it, then it would have access. But what I've heard from Chris is that it likely will be left at that level for additional parking that's helpful to his operation.
So if you're getting gas or something from the convenience store, you'd have to leave the property, go around, and come back up if you want to access the Kayet property.
Unless at a future
Unless
date,
he raises it.
he creates that access, but it isn't something that we've asked him to do one way or the other. And, but, you know, depending on how he develops the property as he goes forward, that's something that he may or may not want to happen.
Sure.
Yep.
Thanks.
So at this time, is there a motion to recommend?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by trustee Balmas, second by trustee O'Brien. Roll call, please.
O'Brien?
Aye.
Balmas?
Aye.
Torstenson?
Yes.
Woodside?
Aye.
Ross?
Aye.
Garner?
Aye.
6 aye.
Motion carries. And at this point, we're going to adjourn the public meeting. So is there a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion by trustee Balmas, second by trustee O'Brien. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, all of you.
You'll be back on the next, like in a few minutes, so for the actual official.
I'll be here.
Okay. So this is a regular meeting of July 24, 2023. And if we do roll call again.
O'Brien?
Present.
Balmas?
Present.
Torstenson?
Here.
Woodside?
Here.
Ross? Garner?
Here.
6 present.
You all stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll start with the approval of the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by trustee Balmas, second by trustee Garner. Roll call, please.
O'Brien?
Aye.
Balmas?
Aye.
Torstenson?
Yes.
Woodside?
Aye.
Ross? Garner?
Aye.
6 aye.
Pat?
Number 1, approval of the minutes from the July 10th, 2023 meeting. Number 2, approval of granting a fireworks permit for the Gurnee Days on August 12th, 2023. And number 3, approval of ordinance 2023-45, amending the Gurnee Municipal Code, Chapter 78, Section 41, regarding the impoundment of motor vehicles. And number 4, approval of ordinance 2023-46, authorizing the execution of amendment number 1 to the intergovernmental agreement between the Village of Gurnee and the Illinois Department of Transportation to add the traffic control devices located at the intersection of Grand Avenue, Route 132, and Belle Plaine Avenue. And number 5, approval of recommendation from Information Systems Division to purchase Schneider Electric Symetra Interruptible Power Supply, UPS, equipment from Gray Bar Electric Company, Inc., at a cost of $27,812.58. Public Works Facility UPS Replacement Project, Omnia Partners Contract, EV 2370. And number 6, approval of purchasing a 1-year Cisco Smart Maintenance Services from the incumbent vendor, CDWG, in the amount of $58,645.39. And number 7, approval of setting a bid date of August 21st, 2023 for the Keith and Atlantic Avenue Storm Sewer Improvement Project. And number 8, approval of payroll for period ending July 14th, 2023 in the amount of $1,028,650.47. And number 9, approval of bills for period ending July 24th, 2023 in the amount of $3,244,916.58.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by trustee O'Brien, second by trustee Garner. Roll call, please.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Balmas.
Aye.
Torstenson.
Yes.
Woodside.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Garner.
Aye.
6 ayes.
Motion carries. On to petitions and communications. First item is approval proclamation honoring Mark and Rose Froseth for being selected the 2023 Gurnee Days honorees. Mark and Rose Froseth have been chosen as the 2023 Gurnee Days honorees due to their outstanding contributions to our community. Over the years, they have demonstrated their dedication as residents, volunteers, and community leaders. Their involvement in various initiatives such as leading Habitat for Humanity groups, organizing food deliveries for the needy, and promoting, I was almost said greedy, so sorry, and promoting inclusivity and anti-racism showcases their commitment to making Gurnee a better place. Now therefore, I, Thomas B. Hood, Mayor of Gurnee, do hereby proclaim August 11, 2023 as Mark and Rose Froseth Day throughout the Village of Gurnee in recognition of their exceptional volunteerism as a reflection of our community's values. Is there a motion?
Motion. Second.
Trustee Torstenson, and second by trustee Ross. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
On to the second one, approval of proclamation designating August 6th through 12, 23 as National Stop on Red Week in the Village of Gurnee. In 1998, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the American Trauma Society established National Stop on Red Week to raise public awareness about preventable and deadly aggressive driving. During the first full week of August, the goal of National Stop on Red Week campaign is to continue to educate the public on the dangers of red light running. Now therefore, I, Thomas B. Hood, Mayor of Gurnee, do hereby proclaim that the week of August 6th through August 12th is hereby designated as 2023 National Stop on Red Week in the Village of Gurnee. I urge everyone to reduce crashes, injuries, and tragic loss of life by stopping for red lights. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by trustee O'Brien, second by trustee Garner. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
On to reports. It's a presentation by Finance Director Brian Gosnell for fiscal year 22-23, fourth quarter financial performance. Brian?
Thank you, Mayor. I think it'll be up here in just 1 second. I hope so, anyway.
I would have read it slower if I knew.
There we go. All right, so included in the material was the financial report for the fourth quarter. This is the period ending April 30, 2023. At the end of the year, cash and investments totaled $48.5 million, 19% in checking, 50% in money market, 31% in investments. 61% of that total was in the general fund, 16% in the capital improvement, and 15% in water and sewer. Looking at the general fund, total revenues 51.7 million. Total expenditures came in at 49.6. That left us a surplus of just over 2 million. It's important to note that that is after the $4.5 million transfer that we approved from the prior year's surplus. Just a couple variances to note here on the revenue side. Some timing of some building permits that we had anticipated that'll be pushed forward to next year. And the red light revenue that we had been talking about at the previous 3 quarters carried through to the end of the year, that negative variance. On the expenditure side, not necessarily a good thing, but more damage to village property than we had anticipated. And then we also had that surplus transfer and some sharing agreements that went over, which is actually a good thing because we don't share that obviously until the revenue comes in. So that means revenues did better than we anticipated there. Looking at major revenues, these account for 68% of all general fund revenues. And on an annual budget of 31.4 million, they came in at 35.3, which means they were over budget by 3.9 million. Big one here is 4.6% above last year and 12.5% ahead of budget. So positive news all around for major revenues. Looking individually at sales tax on an annual budget of 18.7 million, came in at 20.4 million, gives us a positive variance of 1.8. Again, 9.5% over budget, 1.7% over last year. And here we see the impact of that internet sales that we've been talking about really for a full year. Really boosted the sales tax numbers. On the amusement tax side, just slightly over budget. Budget of 3.6 came in just over at 3.7, about 126,000 positive here. It's 3.5% over budget and 3.4% over last year. So again, a positive variance here in amusement tax. Food and beverage came in 450,000 over the $2.1 million budget. Again, 20% ahead of budget and 10% of last year. I've said it multiple times, this is like our most recession-proof revenue stream that we have. It just never seems to waver and just keeps growing. So another positive year for food and beverage tax. On the hotel tax side here, obviously boosted by Great Wolf. Annual budget 1.8, actual 2.3, over budget by just over almost 550,000. That's 30% ahead of budget and 13% ahead of 13.6% ahead of last year. So again, big 4 revenues there, all positive. What does that do to fund balance in the general fund? Unaudited ending balance of 33.2 million. That's 76.2% of expenditures less transfers. Comes down to, we are 4.9 million over the upper limit of the new fund balance policy, which is 65%. So once we get through this year's audit, or the fiscal year 23 audit, just in time for budget prep, we'll come back with a proposal for the board about what to do with some of that excess surplus here. That timing allows us to see how this year's doing, because we'll be about halfway through this year. So we'll know if we need to keep any of that back and be confident that we can move what we can move and spend for capital and other things. Water and sewer side, total revenues 11.8 million, expenditures 10.4, surplus of 1.4 million here. Important to note that we did have a $2 million surplus transfer in from the general fund to water and sewer here last year. If you remember, that was part of keeping the rate increase low. Also had the same damage to village property variance here and some increased electricity costs in the supplies category, pushed that one just slightly over budget by $1,800 bucks. But as you would expect, water usage was down, precipitation was up for the year. Just looking at that, usage down 13.7% versus last year, precipitation up 22.5%. So tracking water usage and precipitation, obviously there's a direct correlation there. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions about the fourth quarter.
To my right. Yes, Trustee O'Brien.
I was just curious, the next page actually, other major government funds. One column really went up big. The 122, looks like my eyes are bad. Subsection 36 something?
I don't have it in front of me. I'd have to take a look. Is it motor fuel tax fund?
I don't think so.
It's investments and contributions?
Yeah, investments and contributions were up across the board just because of rising interest rates. So anything that we had in checking accounts, we saw a huge return on that stuff across the board in every fund. So
that's good.
That's positive.
Thanks.
Any other questions to my right? My left? Anybody? No, thank you very much, Brian.
I
Oh,
do.
sorry. Trustee Ballmes?
And pension for both police and fire should be up right about now? Is that where we're at?
Yeah, right now, we just got our draft actuarial reports. Our contribution did go up, but we're still overfunding based on what we did in the past. If you remember last year, it dropped pretty significantly, like 35% for each of them, and we did not take that drop. We just increased it by 3% and kind of kept funding steadily. So even with an increase, a pretty large increase this year, we're still way above overfunding where we're at. So I'd say just stay the course, keep increasing that by 3%, and we'll be overfunding almost every year, I would think, for the near future.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Brian, I appreciate it.
You bet.
Yes, thank you.
No old business, on to new business. Approval of ordinance 2023,
47.
approving a redevelopment agreement between the Village of Gurnee and Red Crown Investment LLC, 141 for property located at 4821 and 4885 Grand Avenue, Gurnee, Illinois. This was the subject of our prior meeting, which was recommended to this meeting. Anything else?
Make a motion to approve.
Second?
Motion by trustee Ballmes, second by trustee Woodside. Roll call, please.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Ballmes.
Aye.
Thorstenson.
Yes.
Woodside.
Aye.
Ross. Garner.
Aye.
6 ayes.
Motion carries. Thank you very much. I think just you heard from the trustees our desire to see, so we have some old timers have some heartfelt feelings about Avalon, but they don't go that long for a vacant building. So we appreciate you redeveloping that and really look forward to a great project. So thanks. Approval of ordinance 2023.
48.
Approving an agreement between the County of Lake and the Village of Gurnee for intersection improvement along Hunt Club Road, Highway County 29 and Washington Street, County Highway 45, including pedestrian improvements, water main, sanitary sewer, landscaping improvements, and the dedication of right-of-way and granting easements. Pat?
Sure. So I had a memo from our village engineer, Nick Leach, on this. This is a project the county's been working on for a number of years now. Coming to fruition here in the near future. Going to be reconstructing the intersection at Hunt Club in Washington. The boundaries are Data Drive to Wildflower along Hunt Club, and then White Oak Lane to about 1,500 feet of Hunt Club along Washington Street. So they're looking at widening out the intersection, having dedicated turn lanes, improving the street lighting, some landscape medians, drainage improvements, going to be adding some sidewalks and multi-use paths along there where they're currently not in place. Landscaping, there's some water main that's got to be moved out of the way, both Village and Jawa, and then replacement of the permanent traffic control signals there. So as it relates to the village, some of the highlights that we're excited about, the bike path on the north side of Washington Street that ends at Dax Tax will be extended to the west of Hunt Club, so it'll fill that gap in. That was number 13 on the Blue Ribbon Commission's list of priorities, and then they're also looking to install a bike path along Hunt Club north of the ComEd Trail, which was items number 11 and 12 on the Blue Ribbon Commission report. So nice to see those included. The village is responsible for the costs related to the removal and replacement of the sidewalk and multi-use paths, the median landscaping, any sanitary sewer adjustments and water mains that need to be moved since they're in the county right away. And then in the future, so the county will build the sidewalks, the medians, the multi-use paths on their dime, but we're responsible for the maintenance going forward. So that's standard agreement with the county on that. This is something that we've known has been coming for a while, so we've planned for it. The current estimate of our share of the project is a little over $1.1 million, which would be paid in 3 equal installments, and then they reconcile it at the end of the project for those payments. We included money in this year's budget. I think we have $600,000 in between the capital and the utility fund, so more than enough as it relates to having that money available for when the bill comes due. We expect the first payment probably around the end of this year, and they're looking to get started on construction next summer. So avoid that area next summer.
Any questions to my right or comments? Questions or comments? No? Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Oh, sorry. Motion
Can I just ask a question?
Oh, sure.
So there are some houses on the southeast of that intersection? Some residential homes? So they would be due east of that car wash?
Yeah, those homes are on the north side. There's one
Or I
house, I
said
believe.
southeast.
There's
I'm
one
sorry,
house on the south side.
northeast.
Okay,
Yeah,
yep.
Northeast
Yep.
corner, that presently have the ability, if they can, to make a left going east, turning east onto Washington. And I believe they will, because of the median there, they'll no longer be able to turn east, and they'll only be able to turn west out of their property. And my question is who in the village would be responsible for ensuring those residents have received a letter?
I mean, we can reach out again. I'm sure the county will be doing that communication, but there's only a handful of homes along there, so we can follow up. Not our
I thought
responsibility,
maybe it
but
was the county, but then again, I thought, well, it is Gurnee address, correct? Is it a Gurnee?
no, those are county
Oh,
addresses along there on the north side, right, yeah.
Okay, so since they're a Gurnee unincorporated resident, I just would like to make sure that
We can reach out and share
they're
that
not
information.
surprised.
Yeah, we can share that information and then point them to the correct contact at Lake County if they have concerns.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess my only comment would be along those same lines. There, I mean, that is the vulnerability of the walkability right there is that, so that's gonna be a great improvement, but that's gonna impact their property. I know they're not Gurnee residents, but I think reaching out to them would be a great thing to do.
Okay.
There was a motion by trustee Garner. Was there a second?
Second.
Second by trustee Thorstensen. Roll call, please.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Holmes.
Aye.
Thorstensen.
Yes?
Woodside.
Aye.
Ross.
Aye.
Garner.
Aye.
6 ayes.
Motion carries. With conjunction with that, actually, Nick will be giving us a report.
Yes, the August Committee of the Whole meeting, so we're gonna have our first strategic plan progress report update, which will probably be pretty light since we're just getting going on it. And then Nick's gonna give an update on the Blue Ribbon Commission report as far as what we've got completed, what's on the horizon, what other agencies are addressing, and then we'll take a look at what's left on the list, and if the village board feels that needs to be reprioritized at all, we can work on that going forward. So he reached out to the Blue Ribbon Commission to see if they wanted to get back together and meet and discuss about it, and half the commission said no. The village is doing a good job, we're happy with the progress, we don't feel like there's a need to get together and review it, so Nick will be handling that solo in a month.
Thanks, Nick, in advance. Item number 3, approval of ordinance 2023,
49?
adopted by reference the Lake County Watershed Development Ordinance as amended.
Sure, so again, another memo from Nick on this, I'll give a high-level overview. Nick's available to answer questions if there's anything specific. So the county board goes through on a regular basis, every couple of years and reviews the watershed development ordinance, adopts any adjustments that come down the pipeline from FEMA. They recently did this. We were a part of that process as they went through and reviewed it, so attended those meetings. They adopted 35 amendments, including new FEMA maps on July 11th. The village has certified community status, so some of the authority that's retained by SMC under the watershed development ordinance has been granted. 2 communities that are certified communities were one of those, been able to be a certified community. You've got to meet all the FEMA requirements and then adopt the watershed development ordinance. So we have until October 5th, 2023 to adopt it. They divided the amendments into following categories: coastal high hazard areas, wetlands, administrative, floodplain, DECI, floodway storage, rainfall table, and then the new floodplain maps that I mentioned. A lot of the amendments don't impact Gurnee. They focus on the Lake Michigan shoreline. There was one amendment that impacts Gurnee. It's related to the definition of the lowest adjacent grade. Previously, the lowest adjacent grade, which is measured at the foundation, did not include window wells. They've changed that. So now window wells are considered, they measure from the bottom of the window well for the lowest adjacent grade. So that would have an impact on Gurnee as far as floodplain buyouts or any new development in the floodplain. Obviously, we don't want to see development in the floodplain if we can avoid it, unless it meets all the requirements. So again, we don't think it's going to have a huge impact, but when you see 35 amendments, that could tend to raised concerns that there may be a ton of changes coming down the pipeline that affect us. That's not the case. So, again, don't have much of a choice in accepting these amendments. We want to remain a certified community and in the good graces of FEMA in Lake County as it relates to the watershed.
We're rule followers, right? That we are. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Motion by trustee Ross, second by trustee O'Brien. Roll call, please.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Paulmus.
Aye.
Torstenson.
Yes.
Woodside.
Aye.
Ross. Garner.
Aye.
6-0.
Trustee Balmas isn't a rule follower, is that right, trustee Balmas?
No, it's just the floodway. Just had curious, when are those, have we heard anything about when those houses are coming down yet?
Houses on Emerald and Kilburn.
Yeah.
Last we heard was they were geared up, they have permits in with us to demolish the buildings, so I would say fairly soon.
Okay.
Fingers crossed for this next month here, so we'll see.
Okay, thank you.
Item number 4, approval of ordinance 2023.
50.
Imposing a moratorium on the establishment of animal care facilities within commercial zoning districts. Pat?
Sure. So you'll recall, we adopted an updated zoning ordinance back in 2001, and since that time, as it's into practice, we find things along the way that may need a little more attention. We believe this is one of them. So when we adopted the ordinance in 2021, it grouped together a number of animal-related businesses and services and just called them animal care facilities versus having them broken out into different businesses like animal hospital, pet care, pet hotels, et cetera. Animal care facilities under the current zoning ordinance require a special use in the C1, but they're permitted by right in C2, C3, I1, and I2. With those all grouped together, you can have a wide array of animal care facilities, some that would involve potentially animals staying overnight or animals being outside. That being said, that may not be the most compatible use next to another business that's permitted by right in the C2 or C3 zoning district. So staff requested to put a moratorium in place for 6 months for animal care facilities just in the commercial zoning districts to give them a chance to look at that and see whether they should stay grouped together, whether they should remain permitted, et cetera. So they'll still be allowed by right in I1 and I2, just be put on hold for the C2 and C3. We don't have any active permits in related to animal care facilities in C2 or C3, so now would be a good time to do that. Staff will look at it over the next 6 months, see what other communities are doing, bring that back to the PZB, review it with them, and then a recommendation will come out of the PZB to the village board for consideration.
All right. Any discussion? Yes, trustee O'Brien?
This doesn't affect current businesses, right? It's just future?
Just, right, anyone new that would apply. So current are fine.
Yes, is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion trustee Woodside,
Second.
second by trustee Garner. Roll call, please.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Paulmus.
Aye.
Torstenson.
Yes.
Woodside.
Aye.
Ross. Garner.
Aye.
6-0.
Motion carries. It's my understanding that we don't have anything for the committee of the whole next week, so is there a motion to?
So moved.
Motion by trustee Balmas,
Second.
second by trustee Thorstensen. Roll call, please.
O'Brien.
Aye.
Paulmus.
Aye.
Torstenson.
Yes.
Woodside.
Aye.
Ross. Garner.
Aye.
6-0.
Motion carries. Next item is public comment. Anybody that would like to make a public comment, if you'd like to step to the microphone and state your name.
Hi, my name is Karen Finkel. Can I just say what I came to say?
Go for it. Yes. Sure.
Okay, so there is a problem with people sleeping pandering underneath the sidewalk on the corner of 41 and Grand. There's a lady sleeping under there with sleeping bag, pillow, garbage everywhere. Called the police department. They said there was nothing they could do. Reasons for concern are people are stopping in their cars to see if she was okay, number one. So there was, people stopping when there wasn't necessarily a stoplight. The police were wasting time to check on her multiple times because of all the phone calls. The entrance to the city being used as a place for people to sleep. The sidewalk was full of litter and not being able to be used by pedestrians. The property value of the homes going down due to the homelessness problem, pandering, and litter. The city having to waste resources on cleaning up the mess. The potential for this to become a bridge that people set up tents, sleep under, use the bathroom, violence, and indecency in general. I called the police department, asked someone to check on her, first of all, to make sure she was alive. They said that they had and that she refused help. We should be able to refuse to put up with this as people that live here and pay taxes. So I am here to ask what we need to do as property owners, tax-paying citizens, parents, grandparents. We have 33% of our population in Gurnee is kids. So what do we need to do to put an end to this? If, you know, I need to, or we need to make a petition, I don't know what to do. I've lived in this city. My husband was born and raised here. His parents were born and raised here. We have lived here for generations. This is terrible. So, and I also, one more thing is that I live on 41 in Grand. That's where I live. And there is an easement. I live on the east side of Grand. I live on Magnolia. There's an easement between the railroad tracks and our property. And it is filled with water. And I think you are Mr. Leach? Yes. Nick Leach. Okay, I called him, talked to him once. I think there's a motor or something that is broken.
Correct.
Is that in any of this that is going to get fixed?
It's being fixed at the moment.
Okay, so that was a big, huge concern for me.
Yeah.
So,
You brought it up, which you brought it to our attention.
Mhm.
Thankful for it. Public Works is in the process of updating those pumps as we speak.
okay, great. All right. It just, so anyways, if there's anything that we can do, this is it's not only a hazard, it's a hazard to her, it's also not comfortable for the people that live around there to be able to walk, take their bikes, whatever, on the sidewalk. I've got pictures. I can show you pictures, I can email you the pictures. It's hideous. So if any of you get an opportunity to, I just drove here from there. It's horrible. The garbage, I don't know where they're going to the bathroom. I mean, this isn't fair to us. You know, we're paying our taxes too. So anything that you can tell me what I need to do as a citizen for my part, which is, like I said, do I need to write up a petition? Do I need to get a lawyer? What do I need to do as a citizen to get some kind of ordinance that we don't allow people to sleep on our sidewalks?
I'd be happy to talk to you afterwards, and I could describe I'm with you in terms of the issues we've dealt with over the years, and I'd be happy to tell you what our parameters are. So if you'd like to wait right afterwards, I'd be happy to meet with you.
All right, thanks.
Okay, thanks.
Good evening, Keith Owens, 6464 Doral Drive. I'm going to just read part of a letter that I've sent to Pat. It's just went through a couple minutes ago, as well as my comments here tonight. So you don't need to necessarily follow along. But this was a letter stated April 5th, 2019, from the Food and Drug Administration to Terry Handley, President and CEO of Casey's General Stores. And the part that I'm going to read, and you'll be able to read the whole thing when you see it, when Pat forwards it on to you. And the third paragraph says, "We have identified Casey's General Stores, Inc. as one of several national retail chains, either owner-operated or franchised, who have high rates of violation inspections, with more than 15% of the stores inspected having illegally sold tobacco products to minors since the inception of the FDA Retail Compliance Check Program in 2010. Sadly, Casey's General Stores, Inc. has a violation rate of approximately 26%. So that's what they're telling the chairman of Casey's, is that in the 10 years that they've had an active violation check program at a federal level, 26% of the Casey's stores were in violation of selling tobacco products to minors. It goes on to say, this violative history is disturbing and cannot possibly come as a surprise to corporate leadership. In addition to issuing warning letters, civil monetary penalties, and no tobacco sales orders as applicable to violating retailers. FDA also makes retailer compliance check results publicly available in a searchable database that can be accessible by any member of the public, including by corporate management and retailers themselves. And the next paragraph is very short. These illegal sales must stop. Now, the letter references a URL which is no longer accurate, so included in the email that I sent to Pat that he will forward on to you, there is a more up-to-date URL, so you can go to the FDA maintained database and scroll down and dig down and see where various organizations stand right now. It goes by site. It's not just a one shot for the entire corporation. And finally, in the next to last paragraph, it says, the FDA requests that within 30 days of receipt of this letter, you provide a written response that includes a detailed plan, including timeframes to address and mitigate illegal sales to minors. So why is this important to us? I believe the FDA letter is important for you to consider for 5 reasons. First, when vetting any request for tobacco vape products, I hope that your process includes checking the FDA violations database referenced in this letter. Second, if Casey's asks for a tobacco vape license, I trust that you will ask them for their response to this FDA letter and their current policies for store operations. Third, if the village's monitoring practices for tobacco vape sales is the same as those described by the Gurnee Police for alcohol sales, which as I understand it to be once a year per location with advance notice, then I think it is safe to assume, based on the FDA's report, that such violations are much more frequent than caught by any local inspection. 4, since all violations cited by the FDA occurred despite posted signs, restrictions retailers are required to have and enforce, I think it is safe to assume that despite whatever electronic ID system are in place to control the sales of alcohol or any other products, the true control point is simply an employee verifying a driver's license. 5, it seems that large corporations that own or franchise stores that sell tobacco and vape products, and by extension, I would assume sell alcohol, have done a cost-benefit analysis and believe the income to be gained by selling such products to minors outweighs the cost of training and supervising staff, as well as paying any penalties. They clearly view fines as a cost of doing business. The public health and safety risks associated with underage tobacco and vape sales have long been a concern for both the Surgeon General and the FDA. And the risks associated with increased alcohol density has been well documented by the University of Wisconsin research, which has been shared with you all. I find the reasoning that you can buy beer and wine elsewhere in Gurnee and that the police have not expressed any concern about the sales of alcohol at gas stations and convenience store to be a less than a compelling argument. Except for a once-a-year inspection, the police are probably not involved in any attempted illegal sale of tobacco or alcohol, simply because it is not in the best interest of the retailer to self-report. And unfortunately, the police probably only become involved in the sale of alcohol, legal or otherwise, after the fact at the scene of a traffic violation, accident, or assault. For the police, the vast majority of their efforts is enforcement after the fact. That is one way to try to solve a problem. But the best way to solve a problem is to prevent it, or at least to minimize it, before that problem happens. That, in my opinion, is a critical role for this body. And I hope you continue to consider this when future requests for tobacco and alcohol licenses come before you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There not being any further comments, then is there a